Well, hello, everybody, and happy Thursday. Welcome to the 140th episode of Stories of Service, Ordinary People Who Do Extraordinary Work. And I'm the host of Stories of Service, Teresa Carpenter. And today we have another amazing guest. And this time, I always love it when I bring on people from our own service or one of the services, not my service, not one of our sister services in the Marine Corps. Zarina Flemming, how are you doing today?
I am great, Teresa. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Well, I'm excited to have you. You have been spoken about so highly from Jose Montevillan. He had such wonderful things to say about you after we did our show over the Christmas break, and he recommended that I have you on. So I'm glad to have this opportunity to talk to you, to get to know your story. I'm going to read a little bit about your bio, and then we're just going to get started. As I said before, you've risen through the enlisted ranks of the Marines, and I do believe you exemplify resilience and a sense of duty. And today we're going to talk about so many of your projects that you have going on. For one, how you joined the Marine Corps, what it was like to immigrate to the United States at the age of 15, mentoring others within nonprofits, and sharing the stories of female Marines and men too through your podcast, The Green Logbook. As I said, you were born in Ndola, Zambia, and enlisted in the Marine Corps in December 2007. After you graduated from recruit training, she went to Personnel Administrative School and later reported to the Combined Arms Training Center in Camp Fuji, Japan, and served as a unit diary clerk. Then in 2012, you went to the 2nd Marine Logistics Group headquarters in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and you were a manpower and an adjunct clerk.
Adjutant, yeah.
Adjutant, thank you. In 2013 of July, you deployed as the S.O.S non-commissioned officer in charge of Combat Logistics Battalion 6 in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. In 2014, you volunteered for the Marine Corps Experimental Unit, transitioning women to combat arms MOS. In July 2014, you went to the Assault Amphibious Vehicle School, Camp Pendleton, California, where you were the first class of women to earn the MOS of AAV Crewman 1833. Then 2 years later that year, you reported to the Ground Combat Element Integrated Task Force, Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and served as the AAV crew chief to support an experiment to transition women into combat arms MOS. And then in July 2015, you reported to the Installation Personnel Administrative Center in New River, North Carolina, where you were the Quality Control and Inbound Chief. And in August 2016, the Center for Naval Aviation Technical Training Unit, New River, North Carolina, as the S1 adjunct, I cannot pronounce that right, adjunct chief.
Adjutant.
Yes, thank you. And then a whole slew of other jobs that I think we'll probably get into. I'm going to kind of skim down to the bottom, but basically you host the Green Logbook podcast, where you now share stories and experiences of female Marines, and you're involved with several organizations focused on mentoring and educating service members. Welcome again.
Thank you so much, Teresa. It's so crazy to hear, right? Like you go day to day in your career, and when you finally hear it's like, holy cow, that's a lot.
Oh, I know. Like I said, you guys don't see this here, and you'll see it in the show notes. There's about 3 other paragraphs that I sort of skimmed over because I know that as we have this conversation, we're just going to talk about it anyway. And I thought that they would just be better to talk through it. But yeah, it is one of those things where you don't realize as you're doing it, all the things that you're doing until it's read back to you, or you take that moment to reflect, which is why I think it's so important to be reflective. And in the spirit of reflectiveness, tell me a little bit about where you were born and raised, and a little bit about your childhood growing up.
So I was born in Ndola, Zambia. So it's a landlocked country in Central Africa. My mom and dad grew up there. They were pretty successful in the state, in back home in Zambia. So lived there until I was about 15 years old. And honestly, I didn't really realize like the life of privilege that we had back home. So my parents decided to come to the United States, for the opportunity, to give us the opportunity to just be successful and, come into the US. It was really a culture shift because, like I said, back home, I had a maid, I had a cook, I had a driver. So a lot of luxuries that I didn't realize were really luxuries, just that we grew up as, part of life. I have a brother and 2 younger sisters. So coming to the United States, very dramatic shift. We went from, 4-bedroom house, driver's maids, like I said, to a 1-bedroom apartment.
Wow.
And
Why did you guys
exact
make the move?
So my parents wanted to move to just give us an opportunity at education and just a better life overall. And being so young, we didn't really realize just what the American dream is, right? So cliche and everyone says it, but it wasn't really a lot of opportunity for us back home. My parents were pretty successful, so they could have sent us abroad. But coming here as a family just was just overall a better opportunity for all of us to be successful and find our own paths. So 15-year-old me had no idea what that was about. I'm like, what are you talking about? You took my life of luxury away. But
Yeah.
as I got older, as I went to school, something as simple as going to school, my parents had to pay for us to go to school. You come to the United States, you have to show up, right? You don't have to pay any money. You don't have to school fees, none of that. You
Mhm.
show up and you get an education. So a lot of those things, as I got older, coming through high school, I just got to appreciate that I basically could determine my own destiny and determine my own life path depending on how hard I worked.
Right, right. Was that really hard though, as far as like missing all your friends and like this is everything you knew? I mean, 15 is when you're pretty much almost an adult, like legally anyway, an adult. So was that tough for you, that first couple years to assimilate?
Absolutely. So American lifestyle is really fast. It's just go, go, go. Back home, we did have a lot of time to, we shut down at a certain time. There was a lot of family time. We would have every day at 4 o'clock, we stopped and we had tea together as a family. And you come to the United States and it's more so about paying bills and going to school and figuring out what the next thing is to be successful. So it was a dramatic shift. Obviously, I had no friends. I tell people my books were my friends in high school. I had a really thick accent, so I was really embarrassed about just talking to
Yeah, I was gonna
people.
ask if like you were a native speaker growing up because you sound completely American now.
Yeah, so we did speak English back home. It was just a different type of English. So Zambia was colonized by the British. So it
Mhm.
was very just proper English, as people say. So coming to America, there was just an adjustment with just learning how to communicate on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, wow. I can imagine. So you're 15 and you're going through high school. Did you think about the Marines at that point, or was it something that came about a little bit later on?
So did not think about the Marine Corps. My high school did have, or they did offer the ASVAB that last year, I believe it was 11th grade.
Mhm.
So I took the ASVAB not really knowing what it was. It was just another test to take, right? If you know anything about immigrant parents, they're very demanding on education. So any sort of test or any sort of, opportunity that came about, it wasn't even a second thought. So I took the ASVAB in 11th grade. I graduated high school, and at the time, I only had a work permit, so
Mhm.
didn't really know too much about the military. Graduated high school, started taking classes at Georgia State, paying international fees. That's a different story.
Oh, wow.
So it was really expensive to sustain, and I was working at a portrait studio. And one day, I remember there was an army recruiter that came by to take family photos. She gave me her card. Me not knowing really what the military was, I went back and I researched it, and I called her to my house. Again, I didn't have a work permit, so that did not end up working out. And it wasn't about until 2 years later that I finally got my green card, that I was just walking at the mall and I saw my recruiter, and that's kinda where I started talking about the Marine Corps.
Oh, did you see that same recruiter, the one who had from the 2 years back, or you saw somebody different?
So this was a Marine Corps recruiter at this
Oh, okay.
time,
Oh, at the
and,
mall. Okay.
right, yeah.
So
So we
why the Marines? I mean.
honestly, Teresa, I talked to everyone, so I did
Mhm.
really well on the ASVAB. I had over 50, which is considered an alpha. I wanted to join the Air Force after I started to research and talk to recruiters, but they had a really long wait list. So it just got really desperate. Work was kind of just depressing. School was starting to get expensive, and I just needed to get out of there fast. So,
I get it.
the
I get
yeah,
it.
Marine Corps recruiter, he was completely honest. He said it would be hard, it would be difficult. He worked out with me every day, and
Mhm.
it was just the easiest service to join, in all honesty. There was no specific rhyme or reason.
That's crazy because it's the hardest and it's like the most scariest for most people. Like I enlisted in the Navy because I was like, oh, boats and the water, and I get to be in ports and beaches. I mean, it really wasn't. I would have been terrified to join the Marine Corps. I stayed clear of the Marines and the Army because it was. I mean, I didn't know anything either. I'm from a landlocked city, Midwest, Columbus, Ohio. We don't have military people in my town, so I didn't really know what to pick either. So, what was boot camp like for you? What was that adjustment like?
So boot camp was it was interesting because I didn't think it was difficult. I just didn't really understand why, like grown women had to scream at us. Obviously now I understand.
Oh, I love it.
I know everyone is like, what do you mean? So boot camp, it wasn't necessarily physically demanding, although I did get injured. It was more of like a mental.
Mental game.
It, right, especially for me. I was older when I joined. I was 21 years old when I joined. So I know 21 years old being the oldest person in your platoon is kind of interesting. But I had a little bit of life experience. I had worked, I had gone to college. So I just didn't really understand all the chaos and why we just couldn't, talk and go through things. But as it went on, you understand there's a method to a madness. Not everyone has the same experience growing up. Not everyone has structure. So it started to make sense. Yeah, it started to make sense. And now looking on the back end, I think when I graduated boot camp, coming home, realizing the Marine Corps is the hardest branch, I don't know if I would have joined the Marine Corps knowing that information up front. So
Interesting.
yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I see a lot of your Instagram posts where you go to some of these Marine Corps functions, and I was looking through them these last couple days, and it reminds me like why the Marines are so revered. I mean, there's a sense of discipline and structure and poise and presentation that you see in Marines that you just don't see in any of the other services.
Absolutely. And it's just crazy seeing some of just seeing the product on the back end, right? Now I'm fortunate enough to lead Marines, and when I start talking to some of my Marines, it's just crazy to see who they were and how they are now. So yeah, I don't think we'll ever understand it, but hey, that's why we're the best branch out there, right?
But I would argue too, I bet the Marines develop leaders at a lot more junior pay grade than some of the other services because you have to. I mean, there's so many requirements and standards and rules. And so people who are at a very junior pay grade learn to lead early on, I would imagine, in a way that some of the other branches don't have that same opportunity.
I would say so, absolutely. We are leaders from day one. And I think that's something that, right, coming up in the Marine Corps, you just think it's normal. But when you get around other service members, you could really tell there is an emphasis. As a young Marine, you're leading millions of dollars, or you're in charge of millions of dollars of equipment, you're in charge of other people. It's just pretty incredible what the Marine Corps teaches us so young.
In fact, we have some Marines who are joining us on the call. Russell Waters says, and the Marines have the best uniforms. And then Dr. Timothy Paul Belasier says, "Oorah!" So you've got some Marine Corps love here, even on the live show, because people really do love the Marines. You'll notice too that even when we've had recruiting challenges and struggles, Marines don't seem to have those same problems getting people to want to join.
Absolutely. It's just such an incredible community. Brotherhood, sisterhood. It's really, really wonderful.
Yeah, I had Tab Bartley, Blunt Bartley, on my show. I know you've had her as well. And that was one of the things that really struck me about my conversation with her is the fact that, in fact, gosh, Elizabeth Hartman is also a fellow Marine. She's very active on LinkedIn. And they always talk about their time as Marines as being some of the most memorable and places where they felt the most safe and where they felt they belonged the most. And I thought that was really remarkable because the Marine Corps has sometimes the least, in fact, always does statistically, has the least amount of women in the service. but for fellow women Marines to feel so welcomed and so embraced, I found that really remarkable.
Absolutely. And I think part of it too is just as a young person, the Marine Corps is the youngest branch. You come in and you really, you're young, 17, 18, 19. You're trying to figure out who you are. And you're doing such honest work. We really don't realize how impactful just the people we're around and how much that kind of molds into who we are as people. So yeah, yeah, it's great. I love it.
And it sounds like even like people that have had, let's say, a traumatic upbringing or they've had some hardships in life, they're sort of embraced by the collective. And then there's enough of the people that are good and that have to understand how to lead and have maybe worked through some of those challenging circumstances. And so they can kind of come out the other side and help those people along.
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes, again, talking about leadership and mentorship, I think that's why I'm so passionate about mentorship because regardless of your walk of life, regardless of where you came from, coming into the Marine Corps, you could decide to be successful in this organization, or if you choose to depart, like it is our duty to return you to be a better citizen. So it really is about leadership and mentorship.
I love it. I love it. So why did you decide to go into administration and become personnel clerk? What was that path like for your MOS? Tell me a little bit about that.
So a lot of that wasn't really up to me. Like I said, I was not a citizen when I first joined.
Yeah.
So admin was one of the only jobs at the time that did not require a clearance. So I went on to school and I ended up really loving admin. Just I love customer service and I got to figure out who I really was. Upon immigrating, I was very bubbly and I had a big personality growing up. And once I immigrated, that kind of shut down. So I always tell people, the Marine Corps kind of helped me rediscover who I was. And a lot of that was, talking to people and helping people out and just helping them through their problems at work.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the best things about serving is that you get to be around all these different people from all walks of life, all different upbringings, and you learn so many things just by having these kinds of conversations and understanding that everybody didn't get the same things in life, everybody doesn't have the same experiences, and it really does make us better when we're exposed to that.
Absolutely, for sure. And we don't realize how much we have in common,
Mhm.
regardless of where we grew up and what our walk of life was. There is a lot that we have in common.
Yeah, I think everybody wants that sense of belonging, that sense that they matter, the sense that their work matters. Um, Tell me a little bit about some of those early jobs that you had in the Marine Corps and how they helped you become the person you are today.
So administration is not really a technical MOS, but you need to have a lot of attention to details. So just lots of pay sort of things, awards, stuff like that. And I just had really great leaders from day one. I know you talked about the Marine Corps not having the least smallest amount of female Marines in the services, and I had female leadership from day one. So I think that just really I didn't think twice. I didn't think it was anything out of the norm until I did go to places where I was one of one and one of two. But I just had really great mentors and leaders who showed me, hey, if you want to be here, you work hard, you earn your place, you earn to be here. But if you want to get out, like that's an option as well. So I never felt trapped. I never felt like I was doing this for anyone. I was just kind of going to see how far and how much of an impact I could make in my Marines' lives.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So, what are some of the top leadership lessons that you think you've taken away? Like the top maybe two or three things that have served you well as a Marine.
Let's see. I think just working hard to the best of your ability. I think a lot of times when you're in an organization that kind of has certain measurements for success, right? Physically fitness and like leadership, there's a metric that everybody wants to be. But I think if you just work hard and be who you are and be authentic to yourself, that just will serve you well because you're never going to measure up to other people. So just kind of walking your path and being the best that you could be in that moment. And then just mentorship too. You can always you can always help someone out. And I found that out really young. A lot of times, Marine Corps is a hierarchical organization. So, you have senior leadership,
Mhm.
and the perception is that they know everything all the time. But there's a lot of times where, just having conversations, I'll talk to people and they'll tell me, hey, like that, you taught me something today. And it's this, colonel or lieutenant colonel or sergeant major that you don't expect. So just never not taking an opportunity to have a conversation with someone, because it can be a learning experience for both of you.
Yeah, it really can. I mean, there are so many times that I have a conversation with somebody and I learn something or I walk away from it and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I had never thought about it like that," or I didn't see it that way. And it's just because I'm talking to the person that has that type of knowledge. What would you say are your top 2 or 3, leadership challenges? Like, what were some of the harder, um, tours or harder situations that you've encountered, and how did you work through them?
So I would say, let's see. So 2014, I volunteered for the Females in Combat MOS unit, and I would say it was pretty challenging because I went into the experiment not really thinking that women belonged there, right? I was a complainer at the time,
Mhm.
but I had a conversation with my husband, and it was like, if you're going to complain, what are you going to do about it? So I volunteered to see if I could do it. I was married at the time. I had a 1-year old, and I said, hey, if I could go in here and if I could get this MOS and do great at this billet, like who am I to say other women who are other qualified can't do this? So I tell people it was the best and the worst experience I've had in the Marine Corps, physically and mentally challenging. But looking back, and going back now and seeing all those women that came after us, like that was so fulfilling. So challenging as far as I just learned to quit being a complainer. And if it was something that I didn't like or didn't believe in, I just tried to make a difference and see what I could do about it.
Was it just the physical aspect of it? Like, what was the, training consisting of that was so difficult?
So, not sure if you're aware, but amphibious assault vehicles are just really heavy vehicles. Overall, everything is, 50 pounds or more. The
Mhm.
hatches are maybe 80 to 100 pounds. And back then I was 120 pounds. So I'm really tall. I'm 5'10, but I was also really skinny. And just getting out there with the machine guns, just learning to be physically fit, because I never had to really work to that
To that
level
level. Mhm.
before. So it was very physically demanding. In the experiments, it was constant day to day, working out, shooting on ranges. So it was physically demanding, mentally demanding as well, because you're the first, you're trying to set a path
Set
for
an
other women to
example.
be
Mhm.
here. Exactly. So you don't want to let people down, and you just want to do a good job. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a feeling of accomplishment though that you got through it and now other people have done it as well and you have that experience.
Absolutely. And it's, again, looking back, if you told me I would have done that, it's just really incredible. And a lot of times when people find out I did do that, they reach out to me and they're having issues and they're having hard times. And it's just another form of where I could say, hey, I've been there. It's
Right.
not all gonna be great. This is just a rough patch you're going through, but it'll be better.
Yeah, I mean, I think that sometimes too, it's just adjusting to the life of service and the things that are expected out of us. For a lot of junior service members, it's such a culture shock. And like you said, if you can find those mentors and find people that uh, have what you want or you want to be where they're at, I think that helps so much.
Absolutely. And I think now we're making a shift of where, senior leadership is not so far detached. You could, talking about social media, I could
Hmm.
go on social media and I could find someone who I follow or who I admire, and I could shoot them a message, and we can have this, mentorship relationship online with someone in a different country. And that kind of helps, it helps me know I'm not alone and I could do this and I could keep going. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, no, it's great. In fact, shout out to Jackie Barnum. She's another fellow Marine who started a mentorship organization on Instagram, and she's really just kicking butt at it. I think she's up to like 250,000 followers. I mean, it's crazy to see how that has taken off, and it really shows the need for such a service.
Absolutely. Jackie is phenomenal. Yeah, met her a few years ago, and
Mhm.
it's just important to let people know that we're not alone, and if I can't help you, I can find somebody who can help you. And Jackie is definitely a great connector.
She is. She really is. So tell me a little bit about your podcast and what inspired you to get started.
So, yes, the Green Logbook podcast. So going back to being younger, right? So I came in the Marine Corps, Administrative Marine. I've always had females working with me, and I don't really remember where, but I went to a unit where I was the only female in my S1 shop. Not only female in the unit, but I was, the senior administrator, and I was the only woman. And it was about the time where there was just a lot of negative media about female Marines. And everyone I talked to on the civilian side always thought it was weird and strange that I was a Marine. And I took pride in being a Marine. I love being a Marine because obviously that's what I knew. But I didn't realize that there was such a negative stigma being associated with being a woman in the Marine Corps. And at every, not, well, most of the interactions I had was, how are you doing this? How are you a woman Marine? Like, are you okay? And I thought, like,
Oh, wow. So everybody just assumed that like you were a victim of some kind of assault or something, or you've been harassed. And oh, wow, that's interesting.
right. So that's kind of the consensus I got. And it wasn't necessarily only me. It was like female Marines as a whole, as a community. And that was my perspective at the time, right?
Hmm.
And I just could not understand that. I could not relate to that because I knew so many incredible women. So as time went on, and anyone who knows me is I just gravitate towards like leaders in general. But the more and more I look back, it was a lot of female Marines that I ended up knowing, or that I would talk to, or that I would keep in contact with. And it was one day at a conference that I was at, and a gentleman had asked me, how are you still doing this? How are you still being a woman and a mom and a wife and all these things? And that's what got me started. There's a lot of incredible women that I know. And a lot of times, at least back then, being a female Marine just had this negative stigma. So I just wanted to highlight all the incredible women that I knew in the Marine Corps and everything they did. And that's kind of where I got the idea of just sharing stories. Yes, I do have a focus on women Marine because I do feel like that's an underserved community. We don't really hear about too many female service members,
No,
much less female Marines.
right. That's what I
So
mean. Exactly. Female Marines, we don't hear about at all, really.
right. So that's just kind of where I started. I started with some of my friends, and then it's crazy. Like, people reach out to me, and I have a long list that I need to go back on, but it's just incredible. There's a lot of women who love what they do and love to be here and are great mentors and leaders. And that's just kind of what I wanted to highlight.
I love it. I love it. And I think that there needs to be a place where people can share those kinds of stories. And it always reminds me, I share a lot of sad stories and change agents and other things, but I can never lose sight of all the great things that come from serving. And that's why I have to always be fair, always be showing both sides of the coin, because there are so many wonderful things and benefits from serving in the military. And people need to understand that the military is what we make of it, or the teams are what we grow and what we build as a community. And if we create healthy teams, we'll create people that want to continue to serve.
Absolutely. And it's part of life. I think too, a lot of times people take one scenario and make that the majority, but we all have good and bad days. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about it, is we've all had good and we've all had bad days, but in the long run, I've known women who've served 30 plus years. I know women who've served 4 years, and it's been a huge part of their life and helped them kind of figure out who they are in their next
Right.
part of life. So yeah.
And it's wonderful to see too in the veteran space, especially because I see it a lot as now a content creator, that there are so many veteran females who are now giving back and being of service and doing things in this space where they're still serving and just in another capacity. So there's such a potential there, even when you leave the military, especially through your podcast or through whatever you're doing on social media, that you can take that and still provide a service, still be mentoring, and still be doing things that are in a leadership capacity.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's always crazy. I was in Virginia recently and this lady recognized me and she came up to me
No
and she's like,
way.
"Oh, it's it's always interesting when I meet people who listen to the show and who are motivated about it." But she was like 70 years old. I met her at one of the Eighth and I parades, and she's like, "I love so much that you share stories of female Marines because, for her, she never really had that senior leadership. The highest ranking female she knew was a corporal." So it's also great to see, sky's the limit, especially now when we have so many phenomenal, just not only women leaders, but just leaders in all walks of life, all races, all genders. It's pretty incredible.
That's so cool. I mean, isn't it neat to see like what the impact of your little podcast can have is you get this lady from you don't know her from anywhere and she's just like, "I love
I
your show."
know it's so surreal. It's crazy. And sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, like people actually listen. This is great. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I understand. I sometimes get the same notes and it just shocks me as well because I'm thinking to myself, am I just kind of talking to the camera? Am I just talking to especially my solo stuff that I do? But and that's another thing that you do too. You're really good with social media. I've noticed you are. You're really good at your reels. I've been watching some of your reels lately where you do the thing where you go in and you go out and you just do all these different and you put all the clips together to music. I know you're just but they're good. I really enjoy them.
That's funny. I'm thank you for saying that because again, being in the military, I feel like, and we talked about this a little bit. I feel like there's a fine line that we have to walk because we are
Mhm.
professionals and we did join for a job, but I think it's important to be transparent with people and show them, you could be a great Marine, you could be a very professional, great leader, but you have people behind the scenes, you have friends, you have family, you have a lifestyle. And I know sometimes it's hard to navigate, but yeah, it's fun. And I like to show, like, hey, okay, I'm hanging out here with my kids. And
Yeah, that was a video I shared. I loved it. And we have somebody who's joining even from Slovakia who says hello, Ava. So hi, Ava. So you have people from all over the country who are even on this show with us today. But the clip that I loved on your Instagram page, and I do have, I believe, a link to her from the Green Logbook on the show notes here, and then from there you can find her personal page. But I love it. Like it showed you with your kids, and then you did like a shot out, and then and then it's you and your husband in uniform with the kids doing the same
yeah.
thing. I loved it. That was such a cool clip.
Thank you. Yeah, it was just one of those where my older son is he wants to start a blog and he's very creative. So he's like, "Mom, let's shoot us getting ready." So we we did that when we were getting ready for the ball.
I thought it was great. I just, oh man. In fact, you're giving me ideas about things that I could do with my. That's another thing about being a content creator. You never stop running out of cool ideas or cool things, cool ways to post or putting out a message. And I think that's part of leadership. It isn't just the side where you know stand at attention and do these things. You want to show people that you're real and that you're a human and that you have a family and you balance all these other things besides just serving.
Right, exactly. And you could do it all. It is hard sometimes, but you don't have to sacrifice anything. And I think coming up too, I think a lot of women once they have children, that's kind of a critical point where they kind of make the career shift. But I really want to be transparent, hey, you can have children, you can have a family, you can be a single
Mhm.
mom, a single dad. As
Right,
long as you have a support system, you don't have to compromise military service if that's what you want to do. So,
right, right,
no.
right. No, I agree. And what would you say for somebody who's thinking about joining the military? What would be your advice for them?
I would say do it. Don't second guess it. Just do it. At the end of the day, it's 4 years if that's all you choose to do, but it will change your life. I tell people the Marine Corps changed my life. The Marine Corps probably
Mm.
saved my life because I don't know where I would be today if I did not join the Marine Corps. Um, yeah, just do it. Don't hesitate. Take your time. It's going to be hard, but at the end of the day, if you choose to do 4 years, you could do that. But who knows? You may do 40 years and just make a great impact in our nation's
How many
service.
years are you at now?
So I just hit 16 in December.
Congratulations. So I assume obviously you'll make it to 20. Do you have any plans past that, or where do you think this might end up for you?
So at this point, I do have aspirations to go beyond 20. My husband is also an active duty Marine. And those are kind of conversations we're having right now. But I definitely think it's crazy to think 20 years is here in 4 years. I literally remember being at my first duty station, and everyone says time flies. So as of right now, the goal is beyond 20. But we'll see what happens at 20. We kind of go in these 4 year increments and kind of decide there.
Right. Has that been hard being a dual military with your husband?
So yes, um, it has been, but I think part of it is just being proactive and engaging the monitor. So we got married fairly young. We're, geez, 14 years. We're going on 14 years here in December. I know he's going to judge me for that. But as you're younger, we spend a lot of time apart, just because we got married and we already had orders, and then you get stationed together, and he deploys and I deploy and we go TAD. But I would say once we had our older son, we had to just be engaging with our monitors and assignments and just being critical. He's had to take a backseat on certain courses and schools so I could
Mhm.
remain competitive. I've had to do the same. So it's just really understanding what both of our goals are. We knew early on that we both wanted to make this a career, and not a big thing that we did is focus on not prioritizing one person's career.
I love
We
it.
both had to deploy. We both had to go to schools. So it has been hard. We've learned how to form communities everywhere we are, because you can't do this alone. So yeah.
No. No, you really can't. And you find your people wherever you go, and try your best to make some friends, and then you got to leave those friends and start all over somewhere else. So I know the feeling, but in the end, you have some incredible experiences, and you get to live all over the world. I mean, you're in Japan now, right?
I am, yes. I'm in Okinawa, Japan. It's absolutely great. Before I got here, there was a lot of people don't want to come here, but Japan is great. It's awesome. My kids love it. The Marines, the families, it's great. I love it here.
Awesome. What's your favorite part about Japanese culture?
Oh, I would say, let's see. So it's very quiet. And so again, I said I was just in Virginia, getting off the airport and walking into the first airport in the United States. It was just insanely loud. So I didn't really realize that going back there, but very respectful of space, very quiet. If you're in a public setting, you don't really hear people on the phone or listen to music. Everybody kind of just honors other people's spaces. So, yeah, I really, really, really like that about Japanese culture.
Yeah, they're definitely very polite and respectful, and I got that same sense anytime I visited as well. So, yeah,
Yeah,
it's a nice place. So,
yeah.
well, as we're kind of winding down the call, is there anything else that I didn't cover down on, or we didn't talk about, or that we didn't go over about your career, or about you, or about what you want to tell our audience?
Um, I think no, I think we covered a lot. I think I just want to tell people, and we talked about it. I've struggled really a little bit with social media and just putting myself out there, but there is value in just being authentically yourself. There's so many people that I've mentored and talked to, and people will send me their fitness reports, their evaluations, just to get another, set of eyes. I've had made really great friends. There is a value. Leadership is not just day to day with the people you see, but we have to be a walking example in all capacities of our life. So I think, yeah, social media is a great tool to leverage, even though I am working out through that. And Yeah, I think that's
I
same.
think some of that's generational too. I think that as more people come up through the ranks who have used these tools their whole lives and don't see anything differently about a social media post versus a conversation, they'll see that this is just the way things are. And I think some people are a little afraid of the transparency that comes from using these tools. But what I think is helpful is the transparency enables people to feel, I think, safer because then they're like, okay, we're having these conversations about these real issues like sexual assault, like mental health. That now maybe people will know that they will be heard if something happens. They will have a space to share their story, and they will get to connect with other people so they don't feel alone. So I think that's a
Absolutely.
good thing.
Absolutely. Feeling alone is huge. Because for me coming up, all my leadership was just these perfect people who never had any problems. And being vulnerable is important to let people know, hey, I've struggled with that, or I'm going through that, or hey, this is a great thing I'm doing.
Mhm.
And there's a resource available, and you could bounce back from whatever you're going through.
Right, right. And then even for the people who are seeking justice through the system, I think it's good for them to talk to other people who are seeking justice through the system and for them to get ideas about, well, how did I do this? How did I maybe not utilize a lawyer? Because I know a lot of people can't afford a lawyer. So just things like that, I think are really helpful. And if they can connect with somebody who's going through that same issue, they'll be a lot more armed on what to do, what to avoid, just by having those conversations. And so when leaders put themselves out there as a resource to be contacted, I think it's really helpful. So I love what you're doing, Zarina. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story. And where can people find you?
So let's see. Whoa. So I am on Instagram, just Zarina.Flemming. I know I'm on email, so you can email me at zarina.flemming@gmail.com. And then you could listen to the podcast at the Green Logbook podcast. And I'm on Apple, on Spotify.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much. Russell has also chimed in, and he says, "Great show. Thank you to you both in your service from the Great Smoky Mountains in North Carolina." Well, Zarina, thank you so much. I will meet you backstage here in just a minute as I close out the call, but appreciate your time and thank you again for coming on the Stories of Service podcast.
Thank you, Teresa. And I love what you're doing. So thank you for inspiring me and motivating me. Yeah, and I'll see you backstage.
All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This was a quick one tonight, but sometimes that's what we have. And it was an amazing conversation. I hope you all enjoyed it. And I will see you all back week after next. I think I'm going on some travel next week, but take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and have a wonderful evening. Bye bye now.